many people in jail for out there. But the economies that are driven from this are huge, which is why there's so many paramilitary groups that are fighting for the ability to control the drug-producing areas, not only in South America, but Asia, and the opium and heroin trade. It's just crazy. I was going to get to Mexico in a second, but I almost don't even want to bring up the narco state of Afghanistan and what's happening in that part of the world. But it should not be without mention in this class that there are, many countries around the world who are essentially held under siege by this international drug trade, either through provincial warlords. That is the case in China as well with the opium trade. But there's a wide range of different people tied up to militaries and governments and all sorts of things that are transporting sizable amounts of drugs. And when you see these kinds of seizures that are happening on TV and such, the scary part is that, as far as I'm concerned, the ones that are being picked off and being made public aren't the actual bulk of and they'll admit it, this is not the bulk of what is happening out there. This is the tip of the iceberg. And the people that, as far as I'm concerned, are getting caught with these things have, kind of dished somebody or done something wrong along the way, or burned somebody or pissed somebody off, or somebody didn't get as much as they want, and all of a sudden things like this are happening. I bet most of that ends up back on the street. But it makes for really good PR. And it's really unfortunate how much the media has been used to promote the war on drugs, to make some people look and feel like they're doing something. And in this case, we have the Three Stooges up there talking about how they're eradicating the war on drugs and coming down on it. I think it was about a decade the United Nations passed some kind of declaration, give us 10 years, we're going to eradicate drugs. There's reports coming out of the United Nations now acknowledging how completely unsuccessful they've been. In fact, I think, there's so much happening, I can't keep up on it. Jeffrey Myron, economics professor from Harvard University, just released a report that actually suggested that the countries that enforced drug laws more severely had more economic costs and social costs associated with drugs, and showed no impact on the price or availability of drugs. I could be wrong, I only read parts of that, but that was, again, Jeffrey Myron, M-I-R-O-N. The report had just been released recently. And I think there could be no better example than Mexico, as you brought up earlier. It's hard to characterize everything that's happening in Mexico, but Vincent Fox made, at least publicly, statements about being behind the war on drugs. I could be wrong, but I think within his administration it turned out that many of them had been involved or paid off or somehow were working with drug cartels, and it seems to be a massive problem in the United States, in Mexico. We were listening to a radio program where just in one city last year, 9,000 people were killed with drug-related offenses in one city. And this map here kind of gives you a sense of the different kinds of drugs going in and out of Mexico, and the different cartels and how they would be working together. Apparently like 90% of the cocaine that's used in the United States comes across the Mexican border. It doesn't come across boats, it doesn't come across planes, right across the border, one way or another. So they're either intimidating the border guards, and they've got a whole bunch of people that are living their lives under threat to continue that supply chain, or.
Why does the marijuana and meth get put into the same arrow? Are they in the same place?
When I do these PowerPoints, I don't have enough time to check into everything. I don't know why those two would be tied together.
Both start with N.
It doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
You stick the meth with the effect.
And none of the weed is coming over the border.
Yeah, where it's,
Well, it's all rolled into the
I think
All drug traffic, yeah.
Oh,
See,
yeah.
this is where it's all coming up to California and stuff, and across the border into, well, I guess,
Anyway, it's
touches
not a very
Mexico,
accurate
but
map. It's
Arizona, but a lot of it's going to California. Yeah, see, this is all drugs, right? Where, this certain cartel, gets included in all the drugs that are being kind of produced.
What does
and-
cartel
and
mean?
brought up. Cartel is a loose word for the family mafia that you would understand to
And those
have
are
been
some of-
occurring
so
in
like-
Italy. So they would be like, loose conglomerates of paramilitary that would have, business relationships with each other. So the cartels would do business with each other at times. Right now, the cartels are fighting quite a bit. I don't know which cartel is fighting which and which one is aligned with which. But they're very much divided by family lines, by historical, ethnic lines. This map doesn't show all of the geography behind it, but there's certain, kind of geographical areas that define communities as well, with the mountains and stuff like that. So it really, in some sense, many of the countries around the world, because of the Civil War, have developed, kind of like provincial warlords, you could almost sense, right? Here in Canada, we don't call them that. We call them Hells Angels and bikers gangs and United Nations gang and stuff like that, right? But essentially, it's the same kind of paramilitary influence that is brought in with these groups, right? You're in or you're out. Like, if you try to get out, you're dead. Kind of thing. Like, so it's then your family is threatened and coerced if you're not cooperative. So it's very in some ways, there's a lot of similarities between these different, cartels or gangs or, mafia families, whatever the term is. Different countries will have it defined differently. But sometimes they'll cooperate and sometimes they won't. It's hard to say how they're going to behave. But I think, really, when you look at all the problems that are occurring with prohibition, it becomes so staggering that it's impossible to realize or think or get your head around what the alternative would be. And it's often for people, the problems of prohibition are so obvious and so immense that it's almost not even worth discussing. And so providing the alternatives as law enforcement against prohibition does, and talking about legalizing drugs and how that would work and how it would benefit other countries is just as important as talking about the social impacts of prohibition. And I'm not obviously talking about that today, but I found this image and thought that it was a good way to show how the absence of prohibition could very much benefit our communities and take away a lot of international problems when countries like Afghanistan are being torn apart because poor farmers are growing this illegal drug and fighting with their lives for it. And, there's just so many different issues that are occurring as people are both trying to produce and use these drugs, that the costs are staggering and the lost opportunities even more so. And I think it would be incredibly beneficial for our agricultural communities if each country around the world had its own domestic supply of these various drugs, and our agricultural communities would benefit instead of the paramilitary community. So again, next week we've got Dana Larson coming from the NDP party, and it's going to be a really exciting day. Looking quite forward to it. And just a couple lectures left after that. So thanks everybody for coming out. Have a great day.